All right, so I guess we're going to talk about Jon fucking Jones again. Now, personally, I don't know about you. I'm tired of this absolute cunt, but people seem to love talking about this sack of moldy dog shit. So fuck it, we're going to bite too.
You know I would absolutely kill you if you ever did something like that, right?
And in fairness to Jon Jones, he has done pretty well for my channel, so that might have something to do with it. Obviously, we know that he's been charged again, whatever. I'm not going to make this video about that mostly. But should this fruity, horrible cunt be stripped of his title now?
That's a good question.
Oh, man. So I would say, despite Jon Jones being one of the worst role models that you could possibly have within the space of whatever sports you're trying to promote or push, he's just been an ambassador of terribleness for years and years when it comes to, promoting the sport. Despite that, I kind of stick to my rules. Like, he has this conviction. Is it even a conviction yet? Like, I would wait to see how it rolls.
It's a charge.
It's a charge. I will see how it plays out. But if he's convicted, then I would probably go back and look at it, because that ties directly to the organization. But if anything, if he doesn't get a fight before November, that's when I would be stripping him. I know that he has said on multiple occasions that he'll be fighting Stipe in November at Madison Square Garden. If that is true, then I think that he would be safe. But and it's not necessarily the fight that we all need to see.
You don't say.
Or want to see at this point. But it would be a fight. He would be defending his belt. But I wouldn't strip him based on that, even though he's a deplorable person at following laws. He's awful at it. He's very bad at following laws or rules.
No, he definitely is. I mean, we don't really need to talk about the history of this motherfucker, but I'm actually going to sidestep for a second. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the charges thing. Like, I don't really know that much about what happened, but it did kind of sound a little bit like 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. In terms of the charges, she sounded like a little bit of a grade A Karen. I'm just going to say it.
I'm taking the package.
No, you're not taking my package. That's my stuff.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Hey.
Ow! Oh my!
Whatever that stuff is.
And I don't like Jon Jones much these days.
You don't say.
But regarding the actual charges, I'm leaving that out of what my reasons are for wanting Jon Jones stripped at this point. I do think he should be stripped, and I have 2 very strong reasons. Well, it's probably 3 for feeling this way. Now, the first reason, regardless of what happened at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when he got a reasonable testing time, unlike many others, I mean, we've heard stories of people turning up at 6 o'clock in the morning and whatnot.
Wake up! Wake up!
Mm-hmm.
This guy got a 4 p.m. turn up time. You should be ready to test if you're at home to do that. Regardless of whether he was drunk or not, he should have been ready. The bottom line for me is that regardless of what happened in that house, I'm not going to speculate about that too much. The cunt didn't test. If this was any other UFC fighter, let alone somebody that's had prior bans and prior incidences of being stripped, seriously, they would have been, if this had been their first time offense, if somebody had turned up and they'd refused to test, they would have been stripped or banned immediately. The second thing in this is, we know that he's no longer injured, and as we've talked about in other videos, and will probably come up in other topics we're talking about this week, Tom Aspinall is defending his interim belt before his title fight with Stipe has even been announced or made official. I mean, what the fuck are we doing here? I feel like Jon Jones is almost literally waiting for Stipe to turn into an actual fucking ball of dust at this point. That must be his tactic. And the last reason is kind of for more personal reasons. I also think he's a smug, religion abusing little prick who hasn't brought, who's brought more disrepute to the sport than probably any high profile fighters combined. It feels like at this point, and I feel like he kind of needs a calmer beatdown as well. That's kind of how I feel about it.
I can't dispute anything that you just said. I really can't, because all those things are true. No, he's that's who he is. That's who he is, and it's unfortunate because, you know, I like Jon Jones. I've watched his whole career just like everybody else, and when he came in, and I knew it was an act, you know, with the you know how religious he was. I was like, you laying it on a little thick, bro. You know, as a person who grew up, you know, and I went to church, you know, 4 or 5 times a week. You know, I was always at church. I'm like, I can spot him.
You're a liar.
And yeah, you kind of faking it a little bit, you know, because you're trying to put on this persona. You try to be two different people.
I think I am a bad guy that's trying to be good.
Well, now we're seeing who the real you is. And I think it's a mixture of both. Like, I actually don't think that he's always a bad guy. I think that sometimes he allows the bones part of it to take over his ego, and that's when he turns into that person. But I think that the majority maybe of his time, he's a reasonable person. It's just when he turns into bones, it's so bad. It's so awful.
I think that's what I was getting to. It's the thing is here with the stuff that's gone on in his personal life, and there have been plenty of them. I've always been on the side of, I wasn't there, so I don't really know what happened, and I don't think it should interfere with whether he should be stripped or not, unless it's actually slowing down or messing up the division and interfering with other fighters' careers who are deserving. And I feel like that's where we're at. That's the point where we're at with Jon Jones now, where he's actively interfering with somebody else's career who's more deserving.
No, now that
I think that's why I've had enough.
I can definitely see where you're coming from with that, because it does. This whole thing taints Tom's legacy, and that's not fair to Tom at all. It's not his fault that Jon is going through the things that he's going through. And
that's the thing. It's like what you said. Take everything else out of it. The situation with the Karen, all the rest of it. He didn't test on that day. That should be enough to strip this man.
See you next time.